Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Bse Podcast where we talk about all things story. I'm Thalia.
And I'm Nikki.
And we are the co-founders of Bse. We're going to just introduce ourselves a little bit. So I'm going to ask Nikki a few questions about herself, and she's also going to ask me. And that way you can get to know us a little bit better and who we are. Tell us a little bit about your background, babe. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the slums of Campbelltown. I like to say it so slow because it's two very similar suburbs. Mm-hmm. In a little suburb called Enquiries. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, we were called pretty much the very, very, very low socioeconomic town kind of thing. It was a lot of stigma. Just the name was stigmatized enough to know, oh, you're from that area kind of thing. So I don't know if it's like as stigmatized as like, oh, I come from the Bronx or something like that. It's kind of like that kind of stigma. Family, big fat Greek wedding family is literally where I come from. Yeah, it's just a very chitty-chatty, non-stop family that absolutely never has quiet time at all. I found it very bizarre when I moved in with Babe because it was like crickets. I could hear crickets. And I was like, what do I do? There's no noise. And I grew up and I went to uni, I did all that stuff, graduated in criminology and gave the certificate straight to my dad and then literally went into acting school.
And what made you want to do acting?
When I was trying to think, year 4, I believe I was year 3 or year 4. And I auditioned because I was like one of those kids that just does everything in school. So if there's anything in school that I had to audition or like try out for, I'm there. Whether it's the choir, sports, this, whatever it was, as long as I was allowed to just do it in school. Because if it's anything recreational outside, I wasn't allowed to do it because my parents would not travel for me. So I had to do it all in there. So I tried out. I landed the lead role. And for a reward for us finishing the play and stuff, she took us out to watch Annie. Mm-hmm. And I remember I felt so special. It was my first time going to the theatre. It was the local theatre in Campbelltown. And Campbelltown Theatre is the actual town hall of Campbelltown back in the day. So it's like, it was like the theatre, And I went and watched Annie and straight away, I knew that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. That's what I want to do. So I was 7 or 8 years old when I knew already what I was going to do. Every time people ask me, what are you going to do when you grow up? Actor. What are you going to do when you grow up? Actor. There was no doubt in my mind from very young. Of course, I had a very huge passion for music. Annie's a musical. So I never associated the two. So I've actually developed now that I've realised that actually music is much bigger than the actual acting part of it. So in musicals, it's the music that I love more than the movie, But basically, I went and watched that thing, the movie, the play, and just that's it. I knew I was going to do that. And a bit of a sad story is when I told my grandma about it. And should I say this?
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to if you don't want to. It's up to you.
No, I'll say it. So my grandma, I went up to her. She goes, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I said, I'm going to be an actress, Grandma. And she replied to me in Greek. And she said, so you want to be a slut? Literally, a prostitute. She actually said the word prostitute in Greek. And I had no idea what the hell that word meant. Hey, so I'm walking around going, I want to be this, and I'm saying prostitute, but I have no idea what I'm saying. And I went up to my mum and I go, Mum, I said to Thaylia that I wanted to become this, and she said this, and then my mum lost it at her mum. She goes, Mum, you don't say that kind of stuff to my kids, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I had no idea, but I thought I was in trouble, right? So you have that whole like, oh, what did I do? Like, I've just started a fight, you know? And so it was on a back burner. My dad didn't approve of it. No one really approved of it. So it was in back burner. I did it a little bit in year 9, they introduced it to school for us, because you don't do it in year 7 and 8, I don't think. So year 9 and 10 was the only time I got to do theatre in school. And the teacher saw that there was talent there, so she wanted me to do some NIDA short courses and stuff. So I did that. My mum really pushed it. My mum really helped me, you know, persuade my dad to let me do it, because my dad was so against it, right? And then year 10 came and went, and year 11 and 12 there wasn't enough students to do theatre, so we couldn't do it for year 11 and 12. And then I went to uni, which I did criminology, completely different. Though there were some electives, and so in my electives I chose script writing at uni and film history. And so I really delve into film history. After that I went into acting. I really pushed, got my mum to really help me. And she used to take me. I'm now 22 years old and she's still taking me, because that's what Greek people do. They're very obsessive of their child. So she would train it there and train it back, train it there and train it back, and wait for me for 3 hours. She's reading books, waiting for me to finish, because my classes would go for 3 hours, or my rehearsal would go for 3 hours. And then eventually she stopped doing it, because I told her that she didn't have to do it anymore. And then I kind of went off my wagon, had a few addictions, had to process some stuff, came out, this and that. And then I'm here now. All
right, so
is that good? I don't know. I didn't know how much to say or not.
Okay, so like
that was a.
Let's rewind back to your experience throughout school. How did you find learning the Meisner technique? Because that's what you studied, right? What was your experience in learning the Meisner technique, and how did you enjoy it?
There's a lot of error in Meisner, but there's a lot of truth in Meisner as well. So depending on how you kind of do it, I think it can be mentally draining, but I think any acting technique, if we really do it purely and correctly, it's going to be draining, right? Because you're putting yourself and your body and your emotions into very fake realities, right? But they feel like reality, right? So for me personally, the experience was in some parts traumatic, because when you every day are putting yourself into extreme situations of life and death every day, your body is going through the emotions of life and death every day, And so can you imagine the hiding of the emotion to lower it down, and only for you to raise it up again for another situation that's happening? Psychologically and emotionally, that it's too much on a body if you're doing it for as long as I did. I did it for 5 years, right? That's a long time to almost daily put yourself into a life-threatening situation constantly, even though it's made up. When you invest it and you're putting it and you're saying that it's real and it's happening right now, there's a lot of emotion, there. But I was just going to say, like, in terms of the truth part, it's great because Meisner talks about finding the deepest truth.
Yeah.
Right? Deepest truth. I'm Daffy Duck now.
Sucker and
Thuckatash.
That's my saying.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Meisner technique with the deepest truth is really, really like important. It's a really great concept to have, But human truth and God's truth is two completely different things, which when I started to realize that, really threw my technique out the window, because you're like there going, you always learn. If someone, you always make circumstances where you're like, if someone is coming after your family and they kidnap your whole family, you need to go after them, right? This is like a Die Hard kind of movie, right? And you're like, and they're going to kill them. You need to kill them before they kill your family, and you justify it, right? It's called justification, actually, in Meisner, right? So you've created this justification of why it's justified to kill, right? Now, when you then mix that with God's way, it kind of wrecks the motivation. So you're like, I can't justify it. And then you're like, well, now what? Like, how do I get that emotion in me? So I've had over my experience with it worked. Now learning God's truth and God's way and stuff, I can't invest in that, like the emotion of getting that emotion out of me anymore. So, I'm sure that there's a way I can still do it. I just haven't figured it out properly yet.
Yeah. And I've actually heard Jesus say that he can't watch movies anymore because there's just so much addiction in it. It's very much addiction about people just getting all their addictions and stuff like that. So he struggles to watch some movies. And I've heard him say that in a video. I don't know if that's the case where he doesn't watch any movies at all, but that's what he said. So it'd be interesting to find out from God what's God's way of acting, what's God's way of making stories, and without the emotional injury, because a lot of movies are based on our emotional injuries and
what we want or what we don't have.
Yeah. So if acting exists in the celestial spheres and the celestial realms, what does that actually look like, and how do they do it? What are their? Because there's a whole formula to writing stories based on the current world's condition. There's a formula of stories that has to have certain elements to make it work for people to want to watch it.
That's right.
And that's all based on our injuries right now.
That's right.
So it'd be interesting.
For now, the way I do it now with my writing, and and I'm still evolving it, but for now, the way I see it is you start off with a person in their flawed condition and you grow them into a slightly better person, right? Don't, and I think, I use a lot, liar is a great, he's a liar. And he learns truth sets him free. Truth doesn't just set him free, but he wins the love of his life again. He gets the trust of his son again. These are massive things that I think good stories can teach. So it doesn't have to be that that addiction of just going after what you want and getting it in the end or whatever. It should be having learnt something. And that's why I really emphasize the moral of the story, because when there's a moral to the story, all of a sudden it doesn't matter that there was that addiction. He's trying to correct that addiction. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I feel story.
There's a potential there in the way that stories can be written and told.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like the tortoise and the hare thing, So.
Cool. You started out in acting and you learnt this technique of acting, and then you shifted over to focusing more on directing and script writing. And what was the reason for you doing that?
I know how it started and how it happened. I don't know why it happened still.
Yeah.
Okay. But because I love acting, but I hate learning lines. The way it happened was I was going to the classes and stuff like that, but I wasn't putting it into practice as much anymore because there was so much lack of faith in my ability anymore, and I was just very crushed by a lot of the negativity from certain teachers and stuff. So, and students then following suit. So if the teacher attacks, then the students end up attacking. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
My self-esteem went really low, but my intellect of watching people do it and and analysing it, and I was not just analysing my classes, which is 3 or 4 classes a week. I was then also analysing people at rehearsals, which is another like 3 or 4 times a week. Then on top of that, I was even like volunteering to go and sit into beginner classes again and stuff like that. So even though I was in intermediate and stuff like that, I'd go and sit in beginner class and just analyse. And you're doing that to about 15, sometimes 20. It's 40 in a class, they usually divide it, so I still only look at 20. Looking at 15 to 20 students every class, right?
Yeah.
So I was looking at about 100 students a week for almost four and a bit years, right? When I'm looking at that 4 times a week, so 100 students a week, 48 weeks in a year for these classes, there wasn't a long break. There was only a 4-week break in holidays, and that's it. I had learnt a lot about story, about setups, about blocking, all this stuff that the students weren't learning. They weren't they were going up there and they're doing it, but they weren't putting it into practice. They couldn't intellectually put it into practice. And what I found is like a lot of people then at rehearsals would perform it in front of me or, and I'd say, what do you think, Nikki? And I'd go, it needs to be more sharp. I can't tell that you're playing 3 personas, that kind of thing. And I'd block them and I would just guide them with their work. And it started to catch on that I kind of had that skill. I did it with a few plays that they were there as well. And it kind of became a habit for me. I was then going to rehearsals instead of rehearsing for my own stuff, helping others rehearse for their stuff. And now I'm getting people to connect with their emotional self, getting people to connect to the character, getting people to connect with the story, And it kind of became this thing that I just like started to do. And it sort of caught on, And till this day, people still kind of reach out and ask me questions about these kind of stuff and send me their show rules or their scene work, and they just want me to give them some feedback, And I do it, right? So that's kind of that was the thing that led me into directing. But then I got into writing. Just prior to that, I got into writing because I was just getting so embezzled in the story, in the blocking, so I started to write, and so it's kind of just started with just people asking me questions on it, and then
it grew from there.
It took me a completely different road.
Then you were able to direct a play at Kashula Powerhouse, and you've done a number of music videos with me as well, and a short film that we did for studies as well. So hopefully, we'll keep growing from there, hey?
Yes, definitely. I guess now I get to ask some questions, and she always does the most minimal when she thinks I'm going to try to absorb and attract as much as I can out of her, okay? So bear with me. All right, Thaylia Skopoulos.
Yes, that's my name.
Please let us know where you grew up, a little bit about your travels pretty much across all of Australia because you've been everywhere.
I've been everywhere, man. Yeah.
And your discovery on music, I suppose. But start with you and your childhood, please, because I'll try to keep prompting you up because you try to skip as much as you can.
Yes, what Nick is referring to is that I don't like to talk much or talk about me much, or I don't know though if that's true. I don't know. So I was born in Darwin. I grew up in a small town called Kununurra in the Kimberleys in Western Australia. It's like this really small outback town that has like one street of shops, that kind of small. And I grew up there pretty much from the age of 5 years onwards, and as a child I had a lot of fun growing up in Kununurra, like in terms of being free to roam and explore the bush and nature with my friends and my cousins, and I was quite an outgoing kid, so I loved to be out and about. I loved exploring, I loved playing, which I think all kids love that. That's, our pure nature as children is to be just adventurous, And that's something that we want to cultivate. That's why we have in our tagline infinite adventures, because we want to be on adventures and exploring and all of that. Anyway, back to my childhood.
Diverting. Do you see already? She's starting to divert.
So I was very much a bush kid growing up, always out in the bush, swimming, going camping. We stayed out on an Aboriginal community quite a lot because my grandparents were Christian and they were missionaries for their church. So my granddad was a pastor and he was running a church out on an Aboriginal community called Bulla. So we used to spend weekends out there, and I just grew up playing really in the red dirt, playing with blackfellas and my cousins and, walking around bare feet, trying to dodge all the bindi eyes in the ground, like all the prickles and stuff. And yeah, so that was like my childhood just in Kununurra, growing up there. And then we moved to Perth when I was 12. We went and lived with my stepdad, who was my mum's partner at the time, and that's where I kind of grew up for the rest of my adult life in Perth. I went through all my teenage schooling years in Perth and got my first job when I left high school in Perth, and lived quite a long time over there until I moved to Sydney in 2013, and I've been over here ever since on the East Coast. Over here.
What brought you from Perth to Sydney?
A job. I got a job opportunity to work with a music festival over here. So I was doing a 6-month paid internship with a music festival over here. I had just gotten back into my music before coming over to Sydney. I had started music in my early 20s, and because of my addictions, my struggle with addictions, I didn't really do much with that for 10 years. I knew I loved music. I had a passion for music, but my addictions were more strong than my desire for, pursuing my passions. And so I lived the life of a rock star, except without the fame. I partied hard and did a lot of drugs and, all under the skies of having fun, letting loose and all of that. But really, essentially what I was doing was just trying to escape from the pit of emptiness and yuckiness and sadness that I didn't want to feel in my life because of my childhood and certain things that went on in my childhood. And so I practically gotten myself to a very, very dark point in my life where I was going out and partying every weekend, just completely annihilating myself. I wasn't an everyday user, but when I did, I practically made up for that week, So
What do they call that? A functioning addict?
Functioning addict, yeah. Where it's like you binge party, So you work during the week, you go to your job, and I wouldn't say that I was like really functioning in my job, but you rock up to work, you do your hours, and then you party. You wait for the weekend to come and you party hard,
Okay. Typical weekend for thaylia. When did it start?
What? When did what start?
Your weekend, was it like a Thursday, a Friday?
No, my weekend started
Friday.
Yeah, Friday night. My weekend would start on a Friday night.
And end?
Oh, probably on Sunday.
Early hours of Sunday,
early hours. Yeah,
like early hours Monday morning, or
no, by Sunday morning. Yeah,
and then you have to kind of
recover Sunday, and then rock up to work feeling like shit the next day. And then you feel like shit for a few days, and then by the end of the week you're feeling good again, and then you do it all again.
Oof.
So it's just one like big vicious cycle. So anyway, getting back to my story, I had gotten back into my music because in 2012 I decided to go into my own personal rehab. I didn't actually go to a rehab to get sober. I did it all on my own with the help of a body energy healer as well. And so from about the middle of 2011 through to the beginning of 2012, I had started this process of weaning myself off partying every weekend. And by the beginning of 2012, when I got back from my trip from New York, I was like, now is the time. I'm going cold turkey on everything. And so was the year that I started to get back into my singing and my music practice. I would practice every single day. I would do my vocal exercises. I would sing songs every day. I would go out and perform open mic nights, and I would, I was just slowly kind of getting back into music.
And that was still in Perth?
That was still in Perth, yeah. So that was when I was still doing the singer-songwriter, gigs and things like that. So I did that, and from there, like, an amazing thing happens when you stop numbing out. You begin to feel again. There's a layer of numbness that's stripped back, and you begin to feel again. And I started to feel the emotions that I was always wanting to avoid, and it was this yucky nothingness. It was just like an empty pit of, like, just I don't even know how to describe that feeling. But when you strip away the addictions and you sit with your feelings that you were trying to avoid for the past 10-15 years are there, but in a much worse like feeling. Like, it's just like all of this like sadness, depression, like yucky muck, and you don't feel good. Yeah, it's just so heavy, and you don't feel any happy emotion at all. You are just stuck with feeling like shit, So I started to feel again, like, even though I was feeling like shit, I was actually feeling like shit, not like in a pretend la la land of like, woo, my life's great, like party hard. So I was starting to feel like shit. And as a result of that, I started to feel like I completely, when compared to before, I was quite happy in my job. I was like working for a uni, and I was quite happy doing that. So I thought. And then when I started to feel these feelings, I was like, whoa, what am I doing here? I don't like this job. Like, I just realized I didn't like what I was doing, because I was like feeling my truth now, know. And so that's kind of like what sparked me to make the switch over to doing music full time. And so, like, I was doing some things with my old music school, and, one of the teachers there said, look, Grant's looking for teachers. So I'm like, at the time I was like, man, I can't teach. I'm not even that good at like music, like I was just like, but so Grant ended up calling me, and that's how like he offered me a part-time job teaching back at the school that I started learning music in 10 years prior. So I went back there to teach, and that's kind of where I quit that job that I was doing in this big corporate environment at uni and on a big wage. And I quit that, and I went to this job that wasn't full-time. It was just like contracted work off my ABN. So no guarantee of work, just casual. And I had this like mounting debt, from a bad decision I made with buying a house. But I just took a chance. I was like, I've got to do this, like I've got to take a chance and follow my heart, and do what I've always wanted to do, which was to pursue my love of music and my passion of music. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I got the job. Then I started getting invites to perform again, and I was very lucky enough to be invited to sing backing vocals for Archie Roach, Uncle Archie. And that was a big turning point for me, because it's told me that I was on the right path. And, it wasn't like an amazing gig, and I wasn't even that good in my singing, but it really told me that I was on the right path and that I should just keep going, So every little opportunity that came my way, I saw as a building block, a stepping stone to somewhere. And I didn't know where, I didn't know how or what or where I was going to end up, but I just kept following my desires for that. And that's what brought me over to Sydney, because I saw a job advertised to come to Sydney, and I was like,
That's it.
I had actually been praying to God as well. I didn't know I was praying to God, by the way. I didn't really have a relationship with God, but I was like saying out loud to myself, I want change. I'm ready for change. I'm ready for the biggest change in my life. And that's when I found that job, went for the interview, got it. And I was like, all right, pack up all my stuff. Let's go. I know I'm not coming back to Perth. So packed up my house, moved over here, and then had big hopes and dreams and aspirations. I was quite naive though, and still in a lot of addiction with my music. And I was really using at that point music as a way to kind of, as a substitute for the substances. So I was using music as a way to kind of fill myself up and get all these good feelings from. So I still had a lot of those addictions going on. And so when I got here and I had all these big dreams and hopes and blah, 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 really addictions, I soon discovered that God had a completely different journey for me to go on. A completely different journey, and it wasn't the one that I expected.
Yeah.
It was a big journey down into my soul, and that's when I met Maddie, and he introduced me to DT, Divine Truth, and I started listening to these videos, and the rest is history, and here I am. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got back into music. But really, when I look at myself as a kid, I loved music. I always had a Walkman, cassette tape,
You guys need to see the photos. Some of them are gold.
Yeah, so I, always loved music as a kid, and I was literally, like, it's so cliche, but I sang with a brush in the mirror to Gloria Estefan and like all the, like, this is when I was like 11 or 12, and then like all throughout my high school years, as much as I was like a stoner and I was like just running amok, like I still I loved my music. I would listen to my music for hours on end in my room and sing along and try and learn the latest rap and this and that. So I was drawn to music. I loved it so much. I loved to dance. I had this little thing in me, like from very early on about music. And because I never had any lessons though, I was never taught music. I grew up in a blackfella family, and we never did lessons. You don't go to
You
lessons.
grab the karaoke and somehow you're still good at it. That's a blackfellow family for me.
Like you don't, that's not the blackfella way. You don't have lessons. You don't get taken to your lessons after school or this and that. Like, you go to school and you finish school and you go playing in the bush. Like, that was how I grew up. So extracurricular activities after school did not exist in my family.
I just wanted to...
My mum was like, you better do your own homework. I don't even know what that, how to add that up. And my mum, she couldn't help me with my homework. And so, but
I just wanted to let the viewers know, like, if you guys saw, she's talking about 11, 12, she did singing and stuff like that, Walkman and stuff. You should see some photos, and I'm going to beg Babe to put these up on here, but she's got like a I don't know if they're called a sombrero or something, but they're like these big, massive hats, and she's got a little guitar. And then there's another one where you are in a Walkman and just in your undies or something, and you're in your
they're
Walkman.
called bloomers,
babe. Bloomers, sorry.
No, bloomers? The sports undies.
Sorry, sports undies and the headphones with her Walkman and stuff, and she must be 5 or 6.
I might have been 7.
7.
Something like that.
Adorable. I like how you skip those ones and you tell them about like 11 and 12.
But yeah, so like I always had this love for music, but because I didn't get any lessons, I knew nothing about music. I never saw it as something that I could actually pursue or learn or even, get good at. And I, did the right thing by my parents when I finished high school, which was to get a job, and I got a job in administration. I was a receptionist, and I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I loved it, I was so proud to get that job, Yeah, and so it wasn't until that I actually got to my early 20s that I began to consider that perhaps I had a purpose here on this planet, and that there was something that specifically I was meant to do that I could engage and find passion in and develop a skill or something like that, you know. And the one person that actually planted that seed in me was my neighbor, and she was my mentor for a very long time in my childhood, growing up in Perth. And I never had anyone in my family say this to me. I never had this kind of encouragement, but she said to me, you know, you can be anything you want to be if you put your mind to it. You can do anything, Thalia. You know, like that, like no one
Sometimes you
had,
just need that.
yeah, no one had ever said that to me before. And I didn't really know what it meant at the time she was saying that, you know. I didn't believe it, actually. I didn't believe it. I was too young to even absorb that, you know. But it was a seed that got planted that, you know, stuck with me. And so there I was, ready to go into a nursing course. I thought I was going to do nursing. And then I picked up a little book at this job that I was doing. And it was a course of all these, like, different courses you could study for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. And one of them was for this music school called Ab Music in Perth. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, Cert 1, no prior experience needed. I was like, it was like the sun rose. Like, I don't know, it was just like a big sense of, wow, that's what I'm supposed to do. And from there, it's always, been something that I've pursued.
And I guess, like, I wanted to ask you with that, what you're saying, is the mentality of that generation, like our parents' generation, that art is not a safe job. You need a safe job, right?
Yeah.
This safety net in a stable job over arts and passion and, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just think, like,
100%.
elaborate on that, like.
Yeah, definitely, you know, and that's definitely the family I grew up in. Like, I grew up in a family who was very much a working class family, you know. They believed that the only way to survive was to just work. Doesn't matter what you do, you just get a job. As long as it pays you, that's what's most important. So it's all about survival, really, and also, like the conditioning that you look at certain jobs and you say, nah, that's not going to make you any money. And that was very much the conditioning I was brought up in.
And I know this is making the podcast long, but this is really interesting. How do you think that reflects now in the pandemic that we're in?
Oh, babe.
No, I'm just like, because if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Every person, almost everyone that has had the stable job have been threatened on the stable job, right?
Very true, yeah.
So I guess it comes back to what Jim Carrey said, where he said his dad stayed in a stable job, who loved music, stayed in a stable job to provide for his family, resenting it to a point where it killed him in a way.
Well, what happened was that his dad gave up his passion for music and comedy and the arts to have a stable job to provide for his family, to in the end only be fired from that job years later. And so what he learnt from that, what Jim Carrey learnt from that, was that you can fail at doing something you don't want to do, so you may as well fail at doing something you love. So, yeah.
And that's great, right?
And
I only say that it pretty much killed him because it wasn't long after he got fired that his dad passed away.
Yeah, he passed away from cancer, I think.
But I suppose, like, that's such a reality. Now I think that really showed the world as well that they're all in this world doing this job to make income.
Only for it to be taken away just like that. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, that definitely, you know, I read Corney's blog and he said, like, this, you know, what the pandemic is providing an opportunity for people to be able to engage doing something they really want to do. It's giving them time to be able to do that because of all the lockdowns and restrictions and being at home. People no longer having to, you know, work the 9 to 5 grind in a way that they would have worked being on site at their location of their job compared to being at home. So it's an opportunity. The pandemic is providing an opportunity for people to really explore what it is they desire to do with their life, their true passion, what brings them alive inside. Because what it's shown to us is that you can work in a job for security and stability and do something you completely hate for that. And I did that for years, only for it to be completely insecure and unstable in the end.
Because you even went from admin to mining.
Oh my gosh.
To after mining, where did you go?
So I did all sorts of jobs, like food and bev as well. So I worked on 5-star restaurants and islands in Cairns. So I was doing waitressing, food and bev. I did mining, I did cleaning, I did retail, I did tally call center work, I don't forget what that's called, but telecommunications.
That also reminded me of a story that I think people will love.
What?
If you could tell them about your applying to drive a mining truck. I say that because if you guys knew how tall thaylia is and how big a mining truck is, a mining truck you need a ladder to go up, and that's for a normal sized person, and then you got thaylia who's 4'11" and a half.
Don't forget the half.
I'm not saying that she's really short. She's not a dwarf or anything, but like the idea of a big thing like this and then little thaylia here,
Yeah.
But tell them the story. Go on.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
I was working in a mine site because I wanted to get a house and I thought I wanted the white picket fence and all of that. So I got a job in the mines, started out cleaning, and then I ended up getting a traineeship in admin with another construction company that worked on the mines. And initially I wanted to get my license to drive trucks. And I went for a lesson, one truck lesson, but I never actually ended up pursuing it. But yeah, that was something that, I wanted to do. And it was because I was just completely off path,
But question, did you actually drive one? Just
not one of the mining trucks, but I did have a lesson in a truck where I drove what's considered to be a truck, Yeah.
Wow.
To try and, learn the skills to drive a truck. So, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's amazing, actually.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't pursue that. I've done, quite a lot of things, and that's because I was completely just off path, I was numbed out. I had a lot of addiction. Wasn't feeling. I was just using this to try and get somewhere in life, and what ended up happening because I wasn't on the right path, all of that just completely collapsed. I left, my job, I lost my house, I, had a mental breakdown, it was tough, so when you're in that much heavy addiction, eventually it just crumbles down. So.
And one more thing.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to take you back now.
Yeah.
You said you used to go swimming
in
Kununurra and stuff. You didn't mention a key element of the swimming because I think it's something that's so cool and so many people envy you.
Yeah.
Right? And
I don't think so many people envy me.
Okay, anyway. I do. Okay. Tell them where you used to swim that is now infested with crocodiles that you can't actually swim, that area, and what you swam with. Go.
Yeah, so growing up in Kununurra, we were always down swimming in the Ord River. It's the main river stream in Kununurra. It's part of the Ord River Dam, and Lake Argyle is connected to that as well. It trickles down from Lake Argyle down into the Ord River. And So we used to swim a lot down at the riverbank, you know, and yeah, like my uncles used to go spear fishing and stuff like that, and would come up from the water saying, "Oh yeah, we just saw like a freshwater croc," you know. So like there were freshwater crocs where we used to swim and stuff like that. Definitely not saltwater though, because we would have been eaten alive. But there are a lot of saltwater crocs there now. You can't actually go swimming there. It's completely infested with saltwater crocs. But
Incredible.
we used to swim there like every weekend, any moment we could get. We were swimming in the river, like it was amazing. Loved it. Like that's a big part of my childhood that I loved. Like was being in the outdoors and, you know, having that opportunity to explore nature in that way as a child. It was a lot of fun. And you don't look at it like that though when you're a child. You're just playing and having fun, you know. You don't think, oh, I'm exploring nature.
Yeah.
You're just like climbing in trees and like digging things up and like, you know, being creative. Like,
I love that part of you so much.
Yeah. Aw. Thanks, babe.
But it's like, how crazy is that? Because I had an obsession with crocodiles my whole life. And no one could explain it. My family hated reptiles. It was a no-no. Yet I read every single crocodilian, alligator book in my library by primary school. Like, I loved crocodiles that much. And long behold, meanwhile, my soulmate had been swimming with crocodiles. Like, that's crazy.
And you had like this affiliation or this like draw to Darwin, Broome area, didn't you?
Yeah, Broome. Me and my sister would watch the weather all the time and would always go, "What's Broome? What's Broome? Oh, Broome's 40. We're the same as Broome. Oh no, we're more than Broome. Yeah."
Yeah.
So we had this big connection. It wasn't any other part of Australia. Like there was, you know, Adelaide, you know, Darwin and Brisbane could get really hot. Alice Springs was always hotter, but our attraction was always Broome. Broome, Broome, Broome.
Broome.
Yep.
Yeah, but you also had a draw to Darwin as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Because your friend was from Darwin, wasn't he?
Yes. When I was 2 years old, I guess he was my best friend at 2. I don't remember him, but we used to hang out a lot because the family was trying to like make this arranged kind of marriage, I guess. Anyway, and he moved to Darwin, and then he moved to Greece.
Yeah.
But my attraction wasn't anymore to Greece. It was still Darwin. I grew up going, I'm always thinking about Darwin, and I didn't know why. I'm like, Darwin, Broome, Darwin, Broome, Darwin, Broome, you know? And then occasionally Perth would come in. But
then you also had a friend in high school who was from Darwin as well.
Yeah, and he happens to be...
My cousin, or a distant family relative. Yeah. His actual grandmother was my godmother growing up.
That's crazy, hey?
Yeah, so it's...
And we grew up together. He and I did directing actually in high school together.
Yeah.
So
and his brother's an actor too, isn't he?
Yeah, beyond, yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess we better move on to talking about...
That was a great intro though, babe. You did really good.
Did I?
Just saying. Just saying, because she doesn't like to talk a lot about herself. She did great.
I don't. But yeah, so we should probably move on to talking about what we're doing with BSE and what it's all about.
Sure.
So.
Okay, Thaylia, talk to me about BSE. What does it stand for, and where did we get the concept from?
So BSE stands for Beyond Summerland Entertainment, and the way that we came up with this concept was through teachings called Divine Truth. And I've been listening to these teachings for the last 7 to 8 years and learning a lot from them. And one of the things that I learned from these teachings was that there is an actual location that exists in the spirit world, and it exists in the top sphere or top level of the first sphere. And this location is known to be a very beautiful location that children go to when they pass. So children automatically go there when they pass. That is what I've learned, and like from my understanding, all children who pass into the spirit world, because of their innocence and because of their purity, they go to this really beautiful location, and there they are taught by loving spirits, and they're educated and given an opportunity to either learn God's way or go their own way if they want to as well. So it's really like a playground for them to learn about God and to progress beyond that point if they want to. And that's why we called it Beyond Summerland, because the goal is to go further and to grow in love and progress and become at one with God eventually, to learn God's way and to learn everything like about God and about how to heal and about how to become more loving. Because from what I've learned, all of the spheres beyond Summerland are all based on conditions of love. So you have to learn lessons of love along the way to be able to progress into different locations and get closer and closer to God. So it's all about learning lessons in love. So that's how we came up with this concept of Beyond Summerland Entertainment, because we wanted to share stories that teach about God's way as we learn it when we don't know it all and are barely hanging on with a relationship with a God at the moment. But hopefully as we grow and as we learn, we can bring these stories to earth about God and about how to engage this relationship with God and heal our soul, because as we are experiencing right now during this time, the world is in a very broken place, and so are we. And so we are hoping to be able to share from our heart stories that will resonate with others and perhaps plant a seed inside of their soul to seek a relationship with God, just as we have been attempting to.
Great answer. Great. Yes. And I see you got like emotional when you talk about progressing with a relationship with God. How important is that for us in terms of storytelling with Bse?
It's very important, because if we aren't growing in our relationship with God, there's really no way we can share these stories, because if we are not engaging the relationship with God ourselves and working on our emotions, we can't learn God's way, and we will never know God's way, and we will stay in the same place that we are right now. And so it's very important to us creating this platform to share these stories. It's going to be really the core of what we do, is engaging this relationship with God. Without that, Bse won't exist, and it hasn't existed because of that. We've really struggled to get this up and running. We started this like 3 years ago, you know, like a long time ago now, and it's been kind of sitting on the shelf because of our own resistances and our own issues.
Self-doubts.
Addictions.
True. Very true. I guess I just wanted to add to it in terms of like, I feel that Beyond Summerland is kind of an aspiration for us, you know, an aspiration for us to grow a relationship, more of a relationship with God, or if any, because we're quite limited. Everyone is quite limited. You will have sparks of it, and then it goes away, and then there's another spark, and it goes away, and you can't maintain it, you know.
Not
but
right now, that is.
That's right. But I feel like it's like an aspiration. You call it like the seed into someone's soul about God. For me, it's like, it's more for me. It's just even an introduction to stories that share God's truth, stories that you don't have to believe in God, you can, say it's a universe, or, we name it God, but, everyone names it differently. Allah, this, that, like everyone has its own name. But like, it's the aspiration of knowing there's an entity higher than you that curated you, right? And that a lot of our stories, we really want to emphasize God loves you, And I think that's something that people really, like, in their heart of hearts, they do not feel that. They do not believe that. They do not even sense that. They can't feel that. But then when you really do let it hit your heart, it's probably the most emotional feeling you're ever going to feel,
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And that is actually a really good point. Like, the purpose of sharing these stories about God is to teach humanity that God is an entity, is a being that we can connect to. And we can do that no matter what religion we come from, no matter how dark of a place we are in, that we can connect to God, and God has love to give to us. And that when we do experience that love, that it will be overwhelming emotionally and also healing as well, like the healing that will come from that, like in healing and releasing this emotional trauma that is locked up inside of each and every one of us, and is the reason why currently right now we're having so many problems in the world. And so that really is the essence of BSE, is to honor God and God's truth and God's love, and to share that it's available, if we seek with it with all our heart, and that it's not necessarily found in a book, just in a book. Yes. It's found in here, through this emotional, like, connection with God, that we've been able to, like, experience a tiny, tiny little bit, and yet it waxes and wanes, though. That's kind of been my experience with attempting to connect with God. Like, when I have, it's been like absolutely amazing, and then when I'm not, it's just like I feel so far away, like I feel disconnected, and like God isn't there, so it's like it's layers, and that you kind of have to build upon. You have one experience that builds your faith, then another experience, and then for a while you have another area that you're like, oh, I don't have any faith in that area, like there's none at all. Why am I not engaging God? Yet God has shown me this part which I do have faith in, but this part I don't. And it's so weird that you can be like that. Hey, like, it's very strange when you can have like an overwhelming experience that like where you connected to God, and then at other times, and that builds your faith, and then at other times you're just like so faithless, and like you forget God, and you know.
Have you noticed though, like, if you even just give a speck of like faith in it, you're like, I don't believe this thing, but okay, I'll consider the possibility that it could happen. And then over time you go, okay, I'm going to throw myself all in here, and then something happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then other times you're like controlling the whole thing. Like, I'm gonna release this song, and I'm gonna do it like this, and I'm gonna get that there, and and then God's gonna do something, and you're like, yeah. Okay, why didn't it work this time? The other one I only thought about it and it came. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
And it's that puzzle of like still not understanding why that one worked and that one didn't, and this one I put more effort in and it still didn't work, and this one I put less effort in and it worked even more. Like,
it's like the ones that you're not invested in. It's true, yeah. It's like the things that you really aren't invested in are the things that usually, happen easily, with ease, because you're not forcing it. You know, and that's what, one of the things that you learn on God's way is that, like, it's things that you're you have an addiction with, and that like you're trying to force an outcome usually does not happen. But when you put that faith, when you just do things from a pure desire to not get anything, because you're just enjoying it and you're really having a lot of fun and you're just engaging that process, it's usually when something happens. You know, it's like it's when you're not trying to get something from it. I feel like the times when I've like just done things from a pure place of not wanting to get, and I haven't even thought about anything like that, but it's when my intention is to get that it blocks, you know. So I think that's like, yeah, really important. Like, I guess part of learning God's way is to know, to learn and discover what your blocks are.
And your doubts, and then, you know, working through your doubts and your blocks, like you said, you know.
Yeah.
There was something else I wanted to elaborate with that when you were saying it, but I forgot now. That's right. When you were talking about like feeling God and, you know, understanding where like you feel him and then sometimes you don't feel him and stuff like that, right? So I was thinking like, you know, it made me realize like sometimes in music, you know, you can feel someone telling the story, right? And then other times you're like, I don't feel anything from this person when they're saying it, you know? Or like, I heard a song the other day and this guy was saying, he was basically singing about God. And it made me cry because whatever he was connecting in terms of singing it with his pure like heart, fully into it, investing his energy in saying it to God, it connected me to it, right? And you can feel it, you know, and it made me really, really emotional, right? And then like today, I searched for some songs like that as well today, you know, but they were like, you know, singing the song to God, but there was no connection. And I didn't connect, right? And I think with BSC, that's what we kind of talk about as well in terms of story, you know, because you have why one story can affect and why another story can't. And it doesn't have to be music, it doesn't have to be film, you know, it could be a whole different types of story avenues, you know. But I think it's important, like, when you do it, whether it's singing or writing or you're feeling it, you know, because that's the only way you can actually connect to God is through feeling. You can't just talk to God intellectually. You're not going to feel his answers. I mean, you can technically talk to him, but you won't actually receive any answers because it's an emotional response when he answers you.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. You have to, you know, that is one of the ways of communicating to God is through our emotions. So it's important that we are engaging emotionally with everything that we do. If it's just coming from an intellectual standpoint and we're not connecting with any feeling to what we're doing, then it's very hard for God to be able to connect to us as well. And there's a lot of different factors that go into the reasons we may or may not connect to God. Like there's so much more to it, which we don't really have time to go into at the moment, but definitely, you know, connecting emotionally and engaging life emotionally and, you know, allowing your emotions to come up. This one very simple thing is to, you know, allow yourself to feel every single emotion throughout a daytime, throughout the day, you know, throughout the hours of the day, you know, feel every single emotion, because that is ultimately going to assist you to be able to feel God in the end. If you're not feeling yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to feel God.
Well, that actually brings me to another question.
Yes.
Film production. It's probably a very intense industry. They put a lot of pressure on a lot of people to meet deadlines. They make them work very long hours. And if they pass a certain amount of hours, they get double time because they're working for so long, right? Where you're looking at sometimes 12, 15-hour days, only for you to start up again really early in the morning and do it all again. There's a lot of heat that's always exchanged. There's a lot of, through a lot of experiences that I've heard.
Yeah.
On big sets, there's a lot of yelling. There's a argument, disagreements. And they push past this stuff, right? I think people would love to know, like, what's our kind of goal in the back end of making our films for BSE.
Well, what we're trying to do is establish a film production business that is in harmony with God's way. We don't exactly know how to do that. I'm going to be honest. I don't know exactly how that's going to look, but if we were going to run our productions, then the love principle would have to be engaged, and that is to ensure that our productions are run in the most loving way that we can engage it, that's going to be loving to everybody involved. So having reasonable hours, working hours, not running ourselves into the ground like major film productions would do. So having reasonable work hours, and obviously working with people who have a desire for God and who are attempting to work or live in harmony with God's way.
And happen to have a passion for film.
That's exactly right. So I think just at a very basic level, that would be one thing that we would consider in running this film production company, would be to ensure that we are treating each other with the utmost love and kindness that we can in a very high pressure environment. And I know that, that's something that I need to work on for sure. Because
everyone does.
When I get under pressure, I can get very highly strung.
But that's why we have goals in terms of having guidelines to kind of help us in that sense. Like you get angry, go have a break. We'll continue without you until you're ready to come back, or stuff like that. Like, I know they're not going to be perfect and we're not going to get it right all the time, but just to have that there, I think is a great, unique stance on a different way of doing production.
I guess allowing others the opportunity to be able to process and feel their emotions on a hourly rate, and that doesn't really happen in work environments. It's often just yell back, whatever happens,
Yell back or suppress it completely, swallow your words.
Yeah. So, we're going to have to really take into consideration just all of the morality and ethics involved in God's way, which is transparency, openness. Really, what AJ teaches, like what Jesus teaches: truth, humility, faith, and action. If we're applying those principles in our lives, then hopefully we can create a team that is harmonious and, just allowing things to come up when they need to, being open, honest, and truthful, and working on things as we go. It's going to be trial and error. Like, I don't really know how that's going to look in a, imagine we're, working on a set, like on a film that's a big budget, and we do have time frames and certain schedule to fill. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? So I think if we're engaging God's way truly in our hearts, then these things won't be an issue. We'll just allow ourselves to, everything will flow in theory. But it's all going to be a learning process. We don't know. I don't know.
The way I see it is most productions are a mess. Let's be honest. They make it look like it's clean in terms of the results, but it's always messy, you know?
Yeah.
I spoke to Gillian Armstrong. And I asked her, I go, I get so scared to tell people I want it this way. And she goes, you have to just stand your ground, even if you've made this decision and then you realize, 10 hours later after they've just finally finished, she goes, because for one of her ones, she goes, I wanted the dolly tracks to go this way. And she gets everyone to like start making the tracks this way. And then 10 minutes before they finish, she goes, crap, actually, I need the dolly to go that way, and it's taken them so long, half the day almost, to get it done, right? And she goes, now, do I just ignore the fact that I need to change it and try to make that work? Or do I just bluntly, even though they're going to get angry at me, say, sorry, guys, wrong way, I need it this way?
Well, I don't think she said it like that. I remember what she was saying. She was saying like how she did it that happened, and then she just realized she just had to own she made a mistake, and that she was like sorry that I've made a mistake, and she just owned that.
And that's the key. She's like, you just apologize. That's what I was going to get to. You just apologize that you got it wrong, and then tell them what the correct thing is.
Well, express your desire of what you want. I mean, it's just all about being open, even if you are in the wrong, and even if you are completely out of harmony with love, to always say what you feel.
That's right.
And then work through whatever comes up.
That's right.
So it's just about being honest about, on all levels really, just being transparent, being blunt, frank, truthful, honest, which is
that's right.
All of those pure qualities that we all had as children, and that the goal is to hopefully just go, fuck, just say it how it is.
Oopsie daisies, wrong
however
way.
you want to, however that is for you, just say it how it is. So, but just to, sum up that conversation, attempting to run a film production business God's way is going to definitely be a learning process. And we don't actually know exactly how running a film production business God's way looks like, but we do have, I suppose, other people who are running organizations God's way that we can look to and learn from, hopefully, and we will just see how we go. We may fail at it. We may fail dismally at trying to do things God's way. But the point is to learn and grow and, and do and really engage the relationship with God.
Well, that brings me to another quote that I really like.
Okay.
You try, you fail. You try, you fail. But the true failure is when you stop trying.
Yeah.
And I love that quote,
But then, Mary also says, trying is lying.
That's right. But if you're taking action and you fail, that's not trying is lying. That's you're taking the action and it didn't work, How do you sit down and then change again,
Exactly, yeah.
It's experimenting,
Yeah.
So there's two definitions for trying.
So this is definitely going to be a big experiment, and we may not even fulfill our desires in this lifetime. We have all these films that we want to film, but who knows if they will actually come to fruition, because it's going to depend on a lot of different things. To make a film costs a lot of money, especially if you want it to be high quality. And with the certain types of films that we want to make, we're going to need some money. So, we may end up just doing podcasts like this until we get the money to do a film.
Well, we don't have big production companies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We are independent.
Yeah.
And we do rely completely on donations for this.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and our own money our own hard-earned money has gone into it. We've already invested close to 40K, I'd say, in terms of both BSC and Soulset.
Yeah, just equipment.
Of equipment and stuff like
things
that.
Things like that. I don't know if it's exactly 40K, but it's been definitely like a couple of like
in the tens though,
in
for
the
sure.
tens, yeah, like maybe about 20-ish, 20 to 30-ish, maybe.
Maybe.
Who knows? But anyway, it's not really the point.
That's not the point. But the point, I guess, is more like, and we will do a podcast on this in terms of showing people the movies that we have in terms of ideas, and we're having a website for that. Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
So just to talk about that a little bit more, we do have a website that we're currently developing, and we will launch that website once it's completed, and that's going to be like in the next couple of weeks, I would say. And we'll definitely do another, I don't think it'll be a podcast, maybe it'll be a podcast on the website launch, and we'll show you around the website and how it works. And we're going to be pitching some of our story ideas on the website, where there will be links where you can also donate as well. So you can pick which story you feel resonates with you the most, the story that you want to see the most told on earth right now about growing and about, God. And so you'll be able to click on that link and go and donate as well. So that's something that we're currently working on with our website that we wanted to definitely let you know about in this podcast episode that's going to be coming up pretty soon. And if you want to be notified of when the website is done, I'll leave a link in the description where you can actually subscribe to our newsletter online blog, and we will notify you when the website is ready.
That's great. So in terms of podcasts and stuff, I was just going to say, like, where can they find it? Where will they search for these podcasts? Is it just YouTube? Where are you planning to have all these podcasts released to?
Cool. It's something that I haven't thought of, but generally we will be posting our podcast to YouTube, and we will probably post it to any online distributors as well, maybe Spotify, Apple. We'll post the podcasts over there as well, wherever we can, really. And we'll leave links in the description where those podcasts are available, and you can choose what platform you prefer to listen to it. If you don't have time to watch the video, you can always just listen to the audio, and that's really handy when you're just maybe cleaning in the house or whatever you're doing. You can just listen to the audio.
Yeah, because we're going to have a lot of podcasts in terms of story. So if you like music and you want to hear story, like structure of the song, or the story and how it's structured in terms of the song, we're going to be doing that.
No, we won't be. No, BSC is all about film, babe.
Oh yeah.
It's about.
Sorry.
No, scrap that. We're not
Scratch
doing.
that.
There's no music.
Edit that.
Music is not on this platform.
It's not.
If you want to follow music, if you want to follow our music journey, then head over to Soulset Studios. We are releasing music constantly under Soulset Records. So there's a lot of music talk happening over there, alongside of my other platform, Electronics, and Thalia as well. Thalia, I haven't been doing much music over there, but Electronics, there's a lot of music happening over there at the moment. That's the main one that I'm focused on. So we're leaving the music department to Soulset Studios, and that's going to stay over there. BSC, just to let you know, is going to be all about story through either film or books. And the reason why we added in books is because of the current situation in the world, where we are in heavy lockdown and restrictions, and it is near impossible to film anything on a larger scale. We can potentially film something in our home, but other than that, we decided that we would share a lot of written stories as well. So that's really mainly what BSE is going to be about, sharing story through film, and as well books and online material. And obviously you'll have the weekly podcast as well. That I think Friday night's a good night for the weekly podcast, hey?
Yeah, I love it.
It's like the end of the week. We've been working hard all week. Like, I've been doing my video production stuff for my employer, and you've been writing your scripts. So it's just cool to like have a breather and
Just chat.
chat and spend some time with
Yeah.
each other as well. I'm enjoying this.
Me too. Okay, so I guess maybe let's talk about the different types of podcast / storytelling stuff that's going to be in our podcasts. For example, BSE stories, which will be childhood,
yeah.
childlike stories, if you want to elaborate.
Okay, yeah. So we decided that we were going to be creating weekly content. So one of them will be our podcast, and a part of that, and I'm not sure if it's going to be part of the podcast or just like pre-recorded videos, like other video content, but we want to do story time readings where once a week, or whether it's once a week, once a month, it's still yet to decide, but as much as our schedule will allow, we'll do a video where Nikki will be reading one of her stories, and whether that is a child's story or an adult story, you're going to share some of your writings that you are going to write on a weekly basis, and these are just going to be short stories.
Just short stories.
Nothing too in depth, probably maximum 2,000 words or something like that.
Max, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something else that we're going to be sharing on this channel.
And I guess just to elaborate, the kids ones will be, depending, I could probably categorize them into two groups, and it'll be like the primary school version and the early teenage year kind of kids. And then with the adults, I think it'd be young adults / just anyone really in terms of the stories. But they're all going to have a message, I'm a huge believer when I write in the moral of the story, okay? So my aspiration, my, what would you call it? My goal when I write is to leave you thinking, leave you feeling, and leaving you to want to be a better person. Whether it's a comedy or tragedy, you always want to leave as a better person.
Cool, babe.
That's my aspiration when I write, always. So that kind of wraps up our podcast for today. We will have more coming out frequently throughout the weeks.
So we're going to have weekly podcasts, whether they are pre-recorded. We may do some live stream podcasts when we get
a little bit more confident.
A little bit more
for me,
in the swing of it. Like, we'll do some live stream podcasts. So if you want to be notified of when we're doing that, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you'll receive a notification when we set and schedule those live streams to happen. But other than that, we're going to be hopefully sharing one podcast a week. And we hope you've enjoyed the podcast today, the intro on who we are, a little bit about BSE and what we're all about and what we're trying to achieve. And we look forward to sharing this journey with you.
Cool. Peace out.